Welcome to Rico 12. It's the second week running, and try as I might, I am still not Justin B, who's away on his summer break. My name is Silvio, I'm a recovered addict and a recovering human being, and I'll do my best to fill Justin's ginormous shoes today. Rico 12 is all about exploring the common threads of addiction and sharing tools and hope from those on a similar path. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and places to learn and support one another. Our speakers represent various fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, thus showing the common threads of recovery no matter our addiction or affliction. Today's speaker for the 266th meeting is Tom T, a first-time speaker on Rico 12. Now, I know Tom's shares, and I'm excited to hear his experience, strength, and hope today on his topic, right-sizing. We will get to his talk and the Q&A afterwards in just a minute. First, for some business. Rico 12 has several recovery resources in our family of podcasts and social media communities. To learn more, to listen more, connect more, or just hang out and learn and grow with us, you can check out the other podcasts in the show notes or by going to rico12.com and exploring them there. And again, with Justin's permission, there's also my recovery pod called 12 Steps and 12 Questions, where I ask each guest the same 12 questions about their lives, addiction, and recovery. So, plenty of podcasts here to support you in your recovery. Now, Rico 12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us to continue our mission. If you would also like to support Rico 12 and become a spearhead, visit rico12.com/support or click on the links in the show notes and chat for one-time or monthly donation options. Your support makes a difference in keeping us sharing our message of recovery. We look forward each meeting to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now let's introduce our guest speaker for today, Tom T, and give a little background on him. Tom first came into contact with 12-Step Fellowships in 2018 and has been sober and free since September 2021. He talks about the changing relationship with his self and spirit in relation to pride, shame, and the humbling nature of practicing the steps. I can't wait. Take it away, Tom. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Silvio. Hello, everybody. My name is Tom. I'm an alcoholic addict. Really good to be here. It's a real privilege. So thank you for asking me. I love, just to be involved in recovery and in 12-step fellowship and work. Every time I have the chance, it's something that I know I have to do to keep what I've got. But these days, it's something that I want to do as well. Something I love doing and it lights me up. That wasn't always the case at the beginning. I had a lot of resistance to this stuff, and that's something I'm going to talk about. What I've got from this stuff is way more than I bargained for. When I first admitted finally that I was going to need some help from somewhere, all I really wanted was the ability to stop drinking and using, mostly using, for me, cocaine. I wanted to stop that long enough just to catch my breath, really, so that I could figure out what was going on, fix myself, turn my own life back around, and just get on with things. What I've got is so much more than that. I've got, what was promised to me, which was freedom from the obsession to use and the need to use, and bizarrely from the desire even to use, which is something I never imagined. But what I've also got is a very different relationship with myself, and as a result, with everybody else. I am not free from fear and anger and shame because I'm human, but I no longer have them in the driving seat. They no longer control the way I see the world and the things I do or don't do. So I want to talk about a certain paradox today. It's something that I experienced before I came into the rooms, and it got righted as I went through the process and continued to do the process. That was that I simultaneously had a deep, deep shame and felt not good enough for anything and a real worthlessness. And the idea of anybody truly knowing me completely was absolutely terrifying, was completely off the table. At the same time as that, I had really quite a grandiose, defiant ego that was determined that I was only going to need myself to get through all of this and to solve everything. And that one day I was probably entitled to have loads of success and prestige for no apparent reason. So seemingly really contradictory parts of myself. It was like I was a coin with two very, very different sides. And I really needed everybody just to see the shiny side, the side that I chose to present, none of the vulnerability, none of the shame underneath it. And things couldn't be more different now in relation to both of those things. I'm more and more in contact with who I really am, and I'm able to share that with people, and I want to share that with people. And I'm no longer reliant just on myself. I'm reliant on a higher power, and on all the people in the fellowship that I need around me to, hold up the mirror, who have helped me connect, and who I need to stay connected to that higher power. So, yeah, now I'm just lit up by the fact that I don't have to do this alone, and I can't do this alone, and I don't want to do it alone anymore. So what I'm sort of looking through the lens of is this dissonance between those sides of me before, that incredibly low self-esteem and that really quite delusional, idealized ego that I had, and how bringing them together to the right size, so I am somewhere in the middle of those things. I am not implicitly more than anyone, and I'm not implicitly less than anybody. That's the process that I've that I think is really central and is built into the steps in my experience. One of the ways that Bill W. defined humility was, I think, an accurate estimation of oneself, and I think that's, for me, that's what I understand by to be right size, and I call it right sizing just to emphasize it's an ongoing thing. I've never found the right size. It's something I kind of wobble around in the middle. So it kind of makes sense to me when I look through this lens, why in my drinking and using history, I became very, very obsessed with it. It was basically the solution to all of my problems. It dealt with all the feelings I couldn't stand around fear and shame and everything. And it also kind of fueled this ego, and was fueled by this ego as well. I used to get a lot of fun and a lot of love. I would, as I got older and class A's came along, it was just incredible. It gave me a way to, I thought, a way to be who I wanted to be and who I should be, and who I thought you wanted me to be as well. It was just a shame that the drugs and the alcohol wore off and had horrible consequences, right? Like a lot of the bad feelings I had to deal with were a direct result of the drinking and drugs. But never mind that, I would just pile on more. I would just bury the past in the present by getting high, getting that fix of validation externally, and one day I'd get enough of that. I'd get stable enough that I wouldn't need to drink and use in the way that I was, because I always knew that I had really dodgy breaks. As I saw it, I was really, really bad at controlling the amount that I took, often with awful consequences. I thought, other people do that sometimes, right? So it's okay. I'm just more fun than everyone. I'm just like pathologically fun, and I'm gonna tighten up these brakes somehow as I get more validation, as I get more sort of security in myself. I'm going to figure it out. I'll be able to control it as I get more mature, get all the things that I need in love and in money and in prestige, all of that stuff. But as we hear a lot, the opposite happened. My brakes got looser and looser until the point that there just weren't any anymore. When I heard this was a progressive condition, I immediately had to admit, yeah, that's me. When I look over the trajectory over the years, it was just downhill. There may have been moments where I felt I'd taken a step or two up, but overall, there was no denying it. It just got worse. The extremity, the amounts got greater, the frequency, the isolation, and that was a thing that happened fairly suddenly. It felt like as I got into substances like coke, something changed. It seemed physically where I just wanted to get away. And just use and use. And then it wasn't just that I couldn't stop, it was that I had to get more if I possibly could. It's like I was just freewheeling downhill. I just absolutely could not stop unless something really physically stopped me. So needless to say, this led me to some really awful places where I was absolutely full of regret, shame, loneliness, just the opposite of what that shiny side of the coin was, basically. And it was almost as if the more awful it got, the more shiny that side of the coin had to get, the more that ego, that idealized sense of the future, it's all going to work out, that had to get kind of more and more manic, I think, more extreme, because I had this, this fantasy, basically, that that's what was going to happen. And I was really defiant that it was going to be me that would figure it all out, and it would all be part of this rock and roll story that I would be the hero of. That was quite conscious to me. It makes me kind of cringe thinking back to it because it's so different now. But that was it. I'm aware that not everybody will relate to having quite such a grandiose ego, maybe, but I wonder if it's not unusual for there to be quite a stubborn kind of part of the self that is determined to do stuff alone, figure it all out for ourselves, pride being in the way of actually asking for help and getting honest about what's really going on. So yeah, stuff got worse for a long time. And this idealized idea of the future didn't let go. It just had to get more intense. The spiritual state that I got to was horrific. And I got, to a point where I really believed that the world would be better off without me, that everyone had met me, would be better off if I hadn't ever existed. And I really, when I was in it, when I was using, I was really hoping not to wake up. I really was. There was kind of no hope. The only two ways out of this I could see were absolute success and probably stardom, or death. There was just nothing in between. There was no way the two sides of the coin could talk to each other whatsoever. So I suppose, really, in a way, there was some faith that kept me going. There was some idea of something, that some state in the future I could get to that would kind of fix me, that would give me what I needed to be okay, and to stop this terrifying addiction. But the problem was that the thing that faith was in was myself, a very delusional vision of myself. And it was based on the validation I was going to get and the admiration I was going to get from other people. And even if I had got that, I know now it never would have been enough, because it wasn't about that. Now, I love a bit in the book. It's one of my favorite bits. I think it's in We Agnostics, where it talks about deep down inside everybody, there is this idea of a God or whatever, of some power that goes back as long as humankind itself. I think that's so hopeful and so beautiful, and I absolutely believe it. And I can see, maybe this faith in myself, in this ego, maybe it saved me, maybe it kept me alive, or maybe it's the thing that very nearly killed me, or both. I don't know. But what needed to change was that it needed to let go, and I needed to admit and accept that it was going to have to be something greater than me, right? Because me, the not greater than me, was just going towards death and worse, and I was just chasing my own tail. So eventually it got to the point, I can't say exactly what it was. I think I was just tired. It was so boring as well, going around this loop for years and years, building stuff back up, which I would do, and then smashing it down, just like Bill does in his story. I was good at that. I was good at bouncing back, really, really resilient. But I got to a point where I admitted maybe someone is going to have something helpful to say to me. And I was desperate. I was pretty broken. And I was kind of like, I had told people around me, my family and stuff, and they were like, what can we do? What can we do to help you? And I'm like, I really don't know. I wish I could tell you, but I have no idea. And And I came along to my first meeting, and my God, my prideful ego did not like this at all. Going to a room of strangers who were only strangers for about 20 seconds or something, the fellowship being what it was. I went to a CA meeting, which is where I've mostly been based. And I heard the message. I heard that people had been like me, had been thinking like me. People shared some pretty similar thinking to mine. And for the first time, I had some hope that maybe I could actually share the secret shame with these people, maybe, and I'd still be accepted and I'd still be loved, and that there was a way out. So I heard quite clearly the message that, all right, if you want what we've got, we were like you, and now we've got lives like this. I didn't really want all of that. I didn't know what a spiritual awakening was, but I was pretty sure I didn't need one of those. They were like, okay, but we are sober, and I believed them on that. And they said, so what you need to do is keep coming to meetings and get a sponsor and work the steps. And it's going to be, they didn't sugarcoat to this. It's going to be hard work. It's a simple program, but it's hard work, especially at first. But we'll show you exactly how to do it, a step at a time, a day at a time, a moment at a time, if it needs to be. And I thought, nah, I think I'm going to figure out what you've got here, and I'm going to go away, take what I need, and I'm going to put it into much better language and do it my way. And then you'll probably all go, oh, this guy's figured it out. It's not God at all. It's, this ego of mine. It was so exhausting. It's really weird to think about the state that it was in, that I needed to have this manic arrogance, really, really, really arrogant when I think about it. And this resistance to actually just that pride just standing all the way back so that I could accept a spiritual solution, which is what I was being told I needed to do, a step at a time. The resistance to it is why it took another 3 years between them and my now clean date, which is coming up to 3 years ago now. It was a gradual and it was a painful thing. And if I could go back, I would say to myself, not that I'd listen, I'd say, can you please just get that pride to stand back and just get some experience of this, right? And if it gets weird and your sponsor turns out to be a psycho or whatever, it can come back, right? But just give it a go. Just let go of that and see what it's like. Start letting something else in. It was a year and a half before I got a sponsor, and then I did gradually start getting, doing the work, and I got some stuff, but I kept relapsing because I wasn't fully doing it all. I was trying to do it my way still. I liked the idea of this spirit, this higher power, or God, if you like, or anything else if you don't like. That was fine to me. I wasn't resistant to that, but what I was resistant was that it was not me. It was not going to be me in the driving seat, with someone else helping. It was going to be this higher power in the driving seat. I didn't like that at all, I think. And there's it says after step 3, after making that decision to turn to it, whatever it is or whatever it might become, something like, what do we do having made this decision? And it says the first thing is we be convinced that a life run on self-will can't be a success, right? Okay, so that was a point where I could go, all right, I can kind of get on board with that if I really, really look, as I had done in step 1, about what, at what's been going on, where my self-will has actually got me. Okay, I started opening more and more to this. And then I was given, I was given the tools of the inventories to be able to look at the causes and conditions as it described them, which I had no idea, no consciousness at all that they had anything to do with my using fear, resentment, guilt, shame, all of that. I had no idea that had to do with it. I really thought I just used because it feels really, really good. And I'd probably got some neurological difference or something, I'm special, But when I let go of that and I did start treating those causes and conditions, and I used the tools to look at what's really going on, to go, okay, what's actually happening here? Get honest, get humble, begin to get a bit right-sized, yeah? And invariably I find that right underneath there's a fear, there's something I'm terrified of because I'm not good enough and I'm not going to be allowed in the tribe or whatever. And as a result of that, my pride comes in and, acts with mad control or resentment or something that comes in and puts me in a load of pain. So I started learning that there was a way to become more aware, more awake, more accountable for these things. And in doing this, and then in 6 and 7, I got got ways to humbly ask for these things to be removed. We have to get to that humble place first. So that then the work of the spirit, which is greater than us, right? It's my ego. It lets go in that moment. Every time I do that, every time I pray, when I wake up in the morning, this is where I like, what was the problem again? Oh yeah, it was myself running the show. Okay, let's try. How do I get back to that humble place? What does that feel like to me? And with that, and the work, the involvement in the fellowships, naturally it builds up self-esteem and it deflates that ego, right? That was so painful at the beginning when I turned up and I didn't know anyone. It was just like that ego had been crushed and there was nothing bringing up the self-esteem on the other side. But then engaging with this program, as best I could, consistently, I started to inhabit this middle ground, and my God, what a peaceful place compared to before. And how much more useful am I? And all of my worries before, when I heard things like, oh, you're in, self-will, and when people said things like, oh, this is nothing that I've done, it's all what God's done, what my higher power's done, I really didn't like that. I thought, oh, that sounds masochistic. That sounds like I'm going to have to give up my individuality, my ambitions, all of this, and I'm going to become like a drone, because that went through the filter of this prideful ego. It's the complete opposite of all of that. I am more able to pursue ambitions and have clear-sighted ambitions than I've ever been. I'm more able to get in touch with who I actually am. When I do keep doing this stuff and I do see what is going on internally when I get into pain. And what else, the other thing that I found is as I do keep aware and awake to those causes and conditions, the obsession is gone. And that's something I really didn't buy was going to happen for someone like me. I was like, no. You do not understand the relationship I've got with this stuff. You don't know what it makes me feel like. This can't be possible. But it happened. I don't know exactly when. It just happened. And it happened just through keeping that faith, which I got through the feeling of it, the feeling of freedom, which came gradually in my case. But it's hard. It is hard to stay awake, I find, because I still have an ego. We still have one, right? So when it comes in and I become identified with it, and that's usually when I am in some kind of anger or rage or self-righteousness, a big one for me, self-pity, fear, whatever it is, then it's hard to identify that sometimes, because it's just me in that moment. But the way that the steps are structured, it just gives me so many mechanisms where I do realize, and the more I do it, the more I grow, the quicker I tend to be at realizing that stuff. And then carrying on, in steps 10, 11, and 12, I get the ways to grow. I get, an ongoing way of growing with all of these parts of me that are always going to be there, all of these emotions that are always going to be there. And if I keep on that line, I'm not going to have to go back to that response of having to change how I feel somehow. And in step 12, being able to actually be a part of other people getting this, I have never known anything to build self-esteem like that. At the same time, it's not about me. I do the best job that I can. I happen to be the person that they've asked to be their sponsor, and that's amazing. That's what a privilege. But I'm just part of this thing. Fellowship is bigger than me, and spirit is bigger than me. Something which I had no idea what it was, but through the experience, through the feeling of it, it feeds back into the faith, gives me more and more capacity to spot that prideful ego when it comes back and to deal with it. So yeah, I really, I don't know if anyone is out there kind of trying to do it alone. Maybe you're determined that you have to do it alone, like I was. I'd really just say, just give it a go. Give this stuff a go. If you're just doing a bit, maybe listening to a bit of podcasts or something and trying to make it your own, like I did, all I could say is I really think I could have saved myself a lot of time and a lot of pain by jumping in with both feet. Once I, had people around me I trusted and a sponsor that I trusted. It really is the greatest gift once I eventually accepted it. So I think I'm going to finish there. Thanks again for asking me, Silvio, and thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Tom. I really, really enjoyed your share. This was really, really great. A reminder for our live audience here, if you have a question for Tom, please type it into the chat of the meeting. If you wish to remain anonymous, then you don't want me to read your first name, please make a note of that in your question. In the meantime, there's so many things that I was able to relate to there, Tom. Absolutely amazing. So that major contradiction that you spoke of right at the beginning, on the one hand, you have this shame and this worthlessness. What if people knew who I really am, what I really get up to, what I really do, right? And at the same time, you have this grandiose and defined ego. You only have a need for yourself, and that prestige was going to be showered upon you for no apparent reason. And as embarrassing as it is, it's something that I shared at that time. We have often spoken about this privately, that this idea that I'd be able to stop by myself was the biggest cause of pain for such a long time. And I'd like to join your call there. If anyone's listening to this and thinking, yeah, it sounds all right. I can sort myself out. No worries. I'll do this. I'll do this by myself. Then, yeah, you can probably spare yourself a lot of time and a lot of pain, because it's certainly, if you're the real deal addict, it's not going to work. It's not going to help. So I really thought that was really pertinent and something I could really relate to. So thank you for that. Another thing that you were saying there was that right sizing, as you said, is an ongoing process. Now, to you, how do you deal with that? How does that happen? How does that manifest?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it manifests really when I get into some kind of pain, and a lot of pain is necessary. It's going to happen. It's life, of course, but the sort of the radar that I have for it, and the mechanisms of inventory of talking to people regularly, that's the first indicator that something is up. And then when I go and have a look at what that thing is, if I can get down to the nuts and bolts of what's really going on internally, okay, I'm annoyed with this person. I don't think they should be doing that. I can't tolerate that person isn't doing what, or isn't thinking what I can. That's a big one for me. And then I really break it down, and I use the book, and I use other things as well. Like it says in the book, make use of religious people, make use of other professionals. But really, it starts with the inventory, as it is in the book. And I look down at the parts of self that are threatened, and I realize that there is some fear there. And, if I can get to that, I can nourish my self-esteem. I connect to spirit. I get to a humble place, and I can ask for that help. And what I find is that generally, that inflated ego, it deflates itself when I do that. And it's like, what a relief. It's not, it's bigger than this. Everything's bigger than this. I'm just blinkered in this, terrified kind of tunnel vision of the world right now. That's all I can see. I'm just identified with that ego. So that's I need to get. That's an example for me of getting right sized, and it can happen quickly. It can be with my step 10, just in the moment. Me. And as things are repetitive, I tend to get more natural, like oh, it's this again, and then I can quickly get to that humble place.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. You spoke about the progression that you experienced in your illness and in your using and your drinking, and that progression led you to isolation. So in other words, it was just about getting to the point where you'd be yourself, just you with your substance, and that's it, really, right?
Absolutely.
At that time, did you, and this is again a shared experience, but did you have any awareness around this, about how bad this really was? Or did you think to yourself, it's not that bad, and other people do it as well?
You know what? I knew how bad it felt. I knew how bad the experience was, but I think all of that got turned around to I'm bad for this. I'm bad for doing this. Hence, and perhaps it was a defense against this. Hence, I'm going to have to fix myself. I like the phrase, I can't remember where I've heard it, but the future is going to fix the past. That's what it played. The horror of it was like, right, that future better be pretty amazing when I turn around and tell everyone what's been going on. But in terms of like how bad it was when how it might have looked to an outsider, it was so secret. My pride would not let anybody. I mean, I was so ashamed, so embarrassed by what I was doing. It's what it reminds me of actually. I much better since I've been doing the 12 steps, but growing up, have very bad OCD. These compulsions very much tend to be internal thought processes and things. Now, I had no idea what that was until I was at uni. I was like 21, and I read about this OCD thing. It wasn't talked about as much then, in the public domain. And I saw all the symptoms of it, and I went, oh, that's what that thing is. I've just been not thinking about it because I'm like, well, this is me. I'm just weird or whatever. Of course, I'm not going to share this with somebody. It was a bit like that, actually, thinking about it with my using it. It didn't occur to me there might be other people doing a similar kind of thing. And when I came in the rooms and I heard how really directly parallel a lot of the kind of behavior was, what a relief. What that did for my self-esteem, just that, actually. Yeah, no, it didn't. I didn't let myself think about it, I think.
Yeah, interesting. So let me put out the call again. It's time for our guest speaker, Tom, to answer your questions. I've already asked quite a few, and I will also ask the questions from the live audience as and when I receive them. I'll get to as many as I can in the next 20 or 25 minutes. I have one question here. Tom, I hear in some meetings that we need to learn to love ourselves, but I struggle with focusing on me as real recovery, because my disease is so selfish and self-absorbed. Yet I also recognize that my life in my sickness was filled with guilt and shame. How did you find that guilt and shame was replaced with love and compassion for yourself?
That's such a good question.
Yeah.
And I really relate to it. I felt really self-indulgent talking about myself at all, actually. I still sometimes do. But I think what I'd say is for me, finding compassion for the guilt and shame, and coming from that place and accepting it and thinking, okay, that is here. I'm feeling like this. How can I grow, actually? And really, what is going on with the guilt and shame as well? It's not. I don't want to shame it, but like it's not helping. It's not helping to be helpful to others or to myself. So it's okay that it's there. It makes sense that it's there, but actually, I don't need it. I don't need it, and that kind of creates the space, I think, for that self-love to come about and to begin to grow, at least not immediately, and maybe it's something that will always come and go. But yeah, I think that would be my answer.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. I think you illustrated that beautifully, how it grows over time. One other thing that I was really interested in and can relate to is that you spoke of the moment that you first received the Cocaine Anonymous love. The moment you walk into the rooms, and you said it took you 20 seconds to figure out that it wasn't the place you believed it would be, and that it was a place where you could share that secret shame that we've been talking about. Talk to us a little bit more about that moment and, the first few times that you went and that realization, actually, this place is kind of different than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I don't really know what I thought it was going to be. I was terrified to turn up. I think I thought it was probably going to be quite depressing, quite flat, quite kind of like, miserable people sitting around. How can it not be? All I knew was the misery. That's the reason that I was there. So when I turned up, first of all, and it was all smiles and laughs and handshakes and hugs and stuff, it was intense, but it was like, well, okay, this isn't what I was expecting. It put me slightly on edge in a different way. But I also did, I heard pretty much straight away people were like me. This was a place that I was going to be able to be accepted, actually be myself. This was really strange. I still had a huge amount of self-loathing, obviously, so I still didn't feel confident to like really talk to anybody or anything. It was a real release of like, okay, I'm not alone. That was really immediate. And as I said in the show, it was a very gradual thing to be able to then open completely to it. But it was that immediate release of like, okay, this is a place where people, they seem very different from me in lots of ways, but actually what they're talking about and what they're able to talk about, the things people were sharing, like, wow, okay, I can't believe that you don't know, maybe you know everyone else here, but you don't know me, and you've just shared that thing. Wow, it was just really powerful. It was such message just in the atmosphere, in the room, and the nature of it, albeit slow as I was to really hear it.
Yeah, I can echo that in that my I think we call it, what do we call it? Contempt prior to investigation, right? That famous phrase. And I had very similar ideas. Wasn't exactly sure what it would be like, but I knew I didn't want to go, right? If anything, I thought it would be quite a solemn affair, people sitting around, heads bowed and all the rest of it. And when I arrived, all of a sudden everybody's having a laugh and a good time. It didn't really quite fit with what with what I had in mind, you know. Another thing that I thought was really interesting is that you weren't resistant to the concept of God and a higher power, but you still were in a place where you wanted to stay in the driver's seat. Now, that's obviously quite a contradiction there. What did that look like at the time?
Well, I think I just thought that, okay, God, great, I can accept that, or spirit. I was very determined I wouldn't use the word God or prayer, and I didn't for a long time. Now I'll use whatever word, because I think they're just words for describing something that can't be described. God is anyway. So it was something that it was gonna help me, maybe, yeah, but it would be very much on my terms. It was the really not me element of it. Whatever this thing is, it was kind of out there, and maybe I was going to use it like a tool, but like a side thing, like an application. It was the turning everything over to it, to the care, that that was a difficult concept to get my head around and to accept. And I do think it was the self, that version of myself, that was not okay with it. What happened is, the first time I went through the steps, I on my step 4 and 5, I held something back because of shame. And the thing is, I convinced myself that it wasn't relevant. So I consciously wasn't being dishonest, but I had just convinced myself that, oh no, you don't need to do that. And I'd really implore anyone in that situation, as long as you've got a sponsor who you do trust, that you have to be thorough. Like, that was my experience. I'm sure it came around to bite me. And it's not so much about the actual thing that it was. I think it was more about the fact I hadn't let go. I was still trying to, the self-will was trying to hide that, keep it on the other side of the coin. Like, you don't need to know that. That's above your pay grades, kind of thing. And it was after a relapse, I think the last one, hopefully the last one, that I was like, oh, maybe actually that's a thing, because I've been making, I think, pretty good progress. I've got 6 months or something, and there'd been a lot of a lot of change in me. But I was still holding on to this stuff, and that's still something that's just been in the shadows. But I wasn't totally trusting. So I don't know if this relates to your question, which I've sort of forgotten. But that was my relationship with the higher power, kind of.
You always do this. You say, I don't know if I answered your question, then you answered it perfectly. Thank you so much for that. Just another shout out to our live audience. If you have a question, just type it into the chat, and I'll put the question to Tom. In the meantime, you were speaking about that prideful ego and how that is still there. Now, what do you do to keep awake? And I'm quoting you here. What do you do to keep awake and away from that prideful ego?
I think acknowledging it when it is there, not trying to sort of push it away too much, or kind of act like it can't be there. So when I spot myself in some kind of quite egotistical fantasy or something like that, or some idea that I've got to control things, or I can even feel my actions being guided from that place, being aware of it and sort of going, oh, okay, it's here, and I know what I can do here. I can know the tools. But I really think it's step 11 is a huge part of it as well. It's in deepening that spiritual connection, and I get more, I think, just unconsciously, the connection with my real self and with spirit, and that self-esteem, there's less need for it. If it was there, if it was almost like a drug for me, fantasizing about this ideal future, like, it's only needed if there's some cause and condition underneath, I think, going on. If I'm feeling like really lonely, or something's not right, I'm not accepting something, then that's probably going to be coming in. So again, it's looking at it. It's the inventory. It's being honest. It's bouncing off other people. Like, what do you think? As you know well, what's going on here, and they sometimes see it before I do. Kind of why it's
wonderful.
There.
Thank you. We've got a question here from the audience, Tom. I'd like to hear your experience regarding the change between belief in God and relying upon God. When did you experience this change, and how did you step from belief to reliance? And then in brackets, I believed in God for a long time, but only when I began to rely upon him did I begin seeing change. I wonder if you relate, and what is your experience?
Yeah. I think it was a gradual thing. For me, it was. I think I did believe pretty much straight away, because I could see it in other people. I did believe that it could at least keep me, sober if I did this stuff. I was quite convinced with that. It just logically kind of made sense. But whether this could be something that I could trust to guide me in my life and turn everything over to the care of and to rely on, that was a gradual thing. And really, I think the main way that came was through fear. Meeting fear with it. I remember one particular time I was really terrified at some tinnitus that I had, and called my sponsor, and he was like, well, I can't do anything about that, obviously, but here the antidote to fear is faith, right? And at first it was like, really, that's what you're giving me? And then I thought, okay, well, I've got no choice here, so I'm gonna really turn it over. He told me about a thing called a God box, which is where you have a box, a literal box, and you write whatever it is that you're scared of and you're maybe worrying about trying to control or something. You write it on a piece of paper and you put it in that box, so you're physically turning it over. You're handing it into that box. And I did that because I was so scared I would try anything. And I mean, the tinnitus did get better, not completely, but whatever. I knew what that did with the fear at the time. And then there was this feeling that actually I am going to be okay. Whatever happens with this tinnitus, I am going to be okay. It will see me through it. And learning that that's how I could meet any fear. And so sometimes I lose connection with it. I kind of, if I've not had much fear around, I kind of forget it. And then doing this was a good example. When I have suddenly there's, oh my God, there's a load of fear, and this is really, really unhelpful and really unpleasant. It's like, oh, hang on a minute. Yes, I can rely on this thing. This thing is going to be okay if I keep the bare bones of the steps going, then it is going to be all right. And also then it was that thing that I talked about, the thing that I held back, that was the final piece, I think, or that was the final symptom of me not fully relying on it, because I was trying to hide it from the person who was saying, you need to tell me everything, right? So that was finally, I think I was really relying fully on it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tom. And one other thing that comes to me, you alluded to it a little bit in your share, is you spoke about your practice, your step 10, 11, and 12 practice. Mm-hmm. And can you expand a little bit on this and how you work it, how you work those steps, the growth steps, perhaps also with a view to those people who might come in or have just come in or are still working the steps?
Yeah, sure. I think when it comes to step 10, not very well sometimes. I think, given that a lot of that is recognizing and it's being aware, watching for things that come up. I can be asleep. I can be asleep in my ego for for the whole day sometimes. But then I get conscious of that and I say, maybe I need to be a bit more structured here. And I try and have actual structured regular check-ins with myself throughout the day, not just at the beginning and at the end. I find that really, really helps. It's maybe quite a standard practice in a lot of meditation practices as well, but it's just like, okay, set an alarm every few hours and say, what's been happening? Where am I actually? Or seeing certain cues in my environment, kind of thing. Every time I go through a doorway, have a little check-in, going, what's going on? Am I in something? Am I in a resentment? Am I in some kind of trance of ego? And then going through that process. If I am, that makes me more. That's how I try and be more watchful if I'm trying to consciously improve that. Step 11, I have quite a fluid relationship with, but it's consistent. It's always consistent. I pray and meditate, so I talk to this spirit, which will always be bigger than me and beyond me, and I have to remind myself this consciously. And when I really remind myself of that, it becomes mystical again. It becomes something that I want to connect to, because especially in the morning, I can be like, oh, I don't really want to. I just want to go and have my coffee. I'm already off and running. So I bring myself, I right size myself and say, do you remember what happens when you don't do this? And try and get into that space before I begin praying, speaking to it, and then listening to it, watching my thoughts, seeing what comes. I try and do that. The full version of that is 10 minutes and then 10 minutes, or a kind of intermingled 20 minutes or so. And then if I'm doing the full version on the day, if I have time, then I'll do 20 minutes of meditation as well. So like a mindfulness meditation, like a whatever breathwork thing or something like that. And that really centers me. And when it's going well, when I'm connected to it, when I'm kind of on the beam, then that just feels great, and that gives me more motivation to do it. And when it's going the other way, it tends to go the other way, and it's a bit of a grind. But yeah, those are the things. And 12 is just I say yes whenever anyone asks me to sponsor them, and I just try and be the best sponsor that I can, the most attentive and disciplined with myself and them.
Great, thank you. I've got another question here from the audience. Tom, I was in bondage of self my whole life, dating back to childhood. I lived and breathed and thinking about what others were thinking about me. Stayed in less than, rarely in better than. It's been sort of recent that it's been revealed by my higher power that all of this thinking and behavior was as a result of projecting what I think of myself onto others. Complete self-centeredness, selfishness. How is what this person, place, or thing affecting me, etc.? It wasn't that I thought so much of myself, but I thought of myself so much. My relationship with reality and life is the problem. I've been doing so much work on this, and these days I'm loving and accepting myself so much more, and I see the truth about myself. Most of the time I'm so proud of my progress and see how much I've changed, but now that I'm more acutely aware of my thinking, I'm seeing how I shrink down when I'm around new people that I want to know. So any thoughts on this? Oh, here we go. All of the thoughts begin again, not at the same level as before, but beginning to see it becoming a problem again. So another occurrence of this.
Yeah, I love that. That's really amazing experience. Thank you for sharing that. And I think I relate a lot with it, in that I didn't have any idea how much less than I felt, kind of thing, and until it was becoming doing this stuff and feeling the difference, realizing that actually getting a healthy self-esteem and healthy pride in the other direction, which I can have, realize, oh God, I really did loathe myself. I really had these awful feelings about myself. I would never have to, well, maybe I would have to someone else, but not in quite the same way I did. But I mean, I think this is all in the process of growth, really, that it's not going to be linear. Such a deep and probably old belief system, which is what we get to with the inventories. These are not just going to get dug out maybe ever, but and in new environments is likely to be a place that these things are going to get activated again, and we're going to sink back into these old positions. So I try a bit like with the other question, try and have compassion, understanding for what is going on at that moment, and it's okay. I'm not, those things are still there. I'm still, all the progress is still all the progress. Absolutely. And I think I've started mostly do CA and I do some AA, but I've started doing ACA as well. And I think a lot of that work, I'm very new to it, but a lot of that does get down to this kind of stuff, relationship within inner parts of the self, and how that is in different situations, being more and more aware of it. It's complicated. It's deep work. It can be really painful. So I think it's something accepting that that's the nature of this growth.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Tom. Big thanks to you for a fantastic Recode 12 weekly speaker meeting. Now, if we missed your question or if you have more, consider joining our WhatsApp community. Email recode12pod@gmail.com to join the conversation. If you haven't already, please rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts. It's a powerful way to work step 12. Next Friday, we'll have Alex P. from London sharing his experience, strength, and hope with us. Yes, it's yet another Brit. It's like an invasion. And if you'd like to be considered as a future Recode 12 speaker, please send an email to recode12pod@gmail.com and we can get it set up. Now let's launch off into the rest of our day with Tom reciting the Thomas Merton prayer.
My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I do not see the road ahead of me, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I actually am doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope that I have that desire in all that I am doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust in you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever near me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone. Amen.
Amen, so be it. There is one who has all power, that one is God. May you find him now. Keep coming back, and when you do, come all the way in, sit all the way down, and let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Thank you.
There was a man put his hand by the side of his mouth, and he wanted to scream, but the sound never came out. So he reached for the bottle to wash the pain away, 'cause what he wanted so badly was to live a different way. And all of his problems and all of his pain filled up the puddle and rose with the rain. His ship kept on sinking to the bottom of the lake. For certain that he was just a fake, just a fake. Was a man put his hand by the side of his mouth, and he wanted to share, but only lies ever came out. So he reached for the needle to numb the pain inside, and the truth that he yearned for shriveled up and died. And all of his problems, all of his pain filled up the puddle, rose with the rain. The ship kept on sinking to the bottom of the lake. For certain he was just a fake, just a the darkness.